Greetings from Genius Photography. Today we're going to be looking at the Canon R6, the R7, and the R8, and comparing some of the pros and cons and why it makes a difference what camera you use. Let's take a look. Oops. Now all these will do very good work. Some things I like and some things I don't like about them. Though the Canon R8 and the Canon R6 Mark II have the same millimeter size. They're 24.2 effective megapixels, which is a good resolution. I will say though, the one thing that I like about the R7 is it actually has more resolution than the R6. The R7 has a 32.5 effective megapixel, giving it a little bit more details. Now, between the R7 and the R6, what are the important details that make a difference? Well, there is, of course, the full frame factor. The full frame factor will give you more quality when over or underexposing, and more detail and less noise in your shots. Not to say that its little competitor, the cousin of the R7, can't do a very good job. In fact, it does a very good job. There are times I would say a 70 to 200 millimeter lens on the crop factor, it will give you a much closer reach than you would with the 70 to 200 on this lens. If you're shooting a low light situation, maybe in a sporting event at night where the lights are not as intense as broad daylight, then the advantage might come to having the R6 with the higher sensitivity range and the better quality than the R7, but the R7 still does a very, very good job. One thing that I wish the R7 had when it came out from Canon was the actually 24 to 105 millimeter lens out of the box as a kit. This is the kit lens that you get typically with the Canon R7, the 18 to the 150 millimeter range. Now that's a good lens, it's not a bad lens, you get a decent amount of range between 18 to 150 as you zoom in and out, but it's also the variable f-stop. So as you zoom in and out, the f-stop will start to shut as you zoom in more. That's not desirable, especially if you're using manual settings. If you like to shoot at f4 or f4.5, you start to zoom in and it closes up quite a bit. That's not a very good thing. Now, I do like the Canon's 24 to 105 millimeter, and the advantage of buying them together is if you do get it with a kit, you do save a little bit of money. You save $100 or $200 depending on the kit price over buying them individually. Whereas if you wanted this Canon R7, you can't get it as a kit price with the bigger glass. And that's definitely a negative for me. So I really wish I had the option for the 24 to 105 f4 on the Canon R7. But it doesn't come that way. You cannot get it that way, and that's disappointing. Some of the chromatic aberrations are a little bit weaker on this lens. It's not some of the L series lens or the higher quality lenses. You can see the difference is quite significant in terms of the size and the detail and the height. But it is a little bit lighter, so if you don't like to carry around heavy lenses for a long period of time, well, then you won't have to be so weighted down. Now let's talk about the R8. The R8 is a much smaller camera. When you hold it, compared to the R6, it definitely has a lighter feel. It doesn't feel as heavy duty, as durable as the Canon R6. Now reports say that the R8 is very similar to the R6, except that it's not as durable. It has less picture rating in the shutter rating, less durability. There are two major things that separate the R8 from the Canon R6. The two that I like with the R6 Mark II, which is more expensive, about $1,000 more at the current moment in the market, is that the Canon R6 Mark II has two SD slots, allowing you to put two cards in your camera at the same time. Now this may not seem like a very big deal to some of you, but some that have to have weddings or sporting events or events where they're paid and they're required to get good shots, having a two-card system is a big deal because you can have a redundant backup. You can go into your menu settings and you can make it so you now shoot both cards identical. In the olden days, back in the day, when I used to shoot the older digital cameras, I would swap out SD cards regularly. Not before they're full, but every maybe every hour or two, I'd put a new card in to make sure that I had no problems having pictures in case a card went corrupt. I didn't want to fill the card all the way and then I find out that it went bad and that all my pictures were bad. That's no good. That's no good. But the 1 SD slot has serious problems for those who want to shoot professional images and make sure that they have a backup for their wedding or their event photography to make sure they get the job done right and they don't have to reshoot or they don't have a lawsuit on their hands. Nobody likes a lawsuit. Ain't nobody got time for that. Now on the R8 camera, it also only has 1 SD slot, and that's not necessarily desirable. There is a different battery mount. So if you've been using some of the Canon R6, the 60D series, 70D, 80D series, the batteries are interchangeable with the R6. For the R8, you actually have a different battery than you would have with all the other cameras for the Canon system. Now, that's not a bad thing, but just be aware, if you have other batteries from your other systems of Canon digital SLRs, it won't work for this camera. You'll have to buy some different batteries. The other factor that I don't necessarily care for in the R8 is the image stabilization of the camera. Now the R8 does work in video mode with a stabilization, but it doesn't work in photo mode. So if you want to put it onto photo mode, you can't do that. You have to have the image stabilizer of the lens only, whereas the R8, I've shot pictures at half second, even full second with the image stabilization, and it actually looks fairly sharp. So the in-camera stabilization is better on the Canon R6 than you would see on some of the other cameras like this. Now between the Canon R6 and the R8, what is the difference? Well, for serious photographers, you very well might like the 2 SD card slots and the image stabilizer for photos, but it doesn't have it on the R8. Sorry. But if you're a budget-friendly person trying to save a little dollars, maybe $1,000 between the cameras, the R8 is a good way to get a full-frame camera at a good Canon price. Bravo, Canon! Bravo! It does have an on-camera stabilization for photos, which is nice if you're shooting in low-light photography, like something like a wedding or a photojournalist, and you need to make sure you get the shot right. This might be a good option. So which one is best for you? Well, it depends on your needs. Comment below which one you like best. I'd love to have a discussion to see why you use the Canon R6, the R7, or the Canon R8.